Welcome to the More Than Anxiety podcast. I'm Megan DeVito, and I help ambitious women break out of the anxiety cycle that keeps them frustrated and stuck. Get ready for a lighthearted approach that will change what you think, how you feel, and what you believe about yourself. This podcast is full of simple steps, a lot of truth talk, and inspiration to take action so you walk away feeling confident, calm, and ready to live. Let's get to it. Hey there. Welcome to episode 95 of the More Than Anxiety podcast. My name's Megan. I'm a life coach, and I help women with big goals, big stress, and big anxiety work through those feelings in their body and be able to step forward and move towards the things that they really want. I also have the opportunity to be able to introduce you to other people who can help you work through anxiety, work through really big emotions. And this week you get to meet Elle Key. Elle is a therapist in the northeast part of the United States. She works using a narrative intervention where she helps her clients tell stories about what might have happened in their past that made them feel unheard, not seen, or dismissed so that they can let go of that anxiety and move forward. She does incredible work, and I'm so excited to be able to introduce you to her in this episode. Enjoy.
Great.
Okay, sure.
All
So
right, so
I'm a psychotherapist in Maine and New Hampshire, and I just finished a certification in narrative-focused trauma care and somatics, mind body coaching, so I can treat anxiety is my favorite thing more effectively. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm going to come at you today with a narrative lens when we're talking about anxiety.
Great. Then let's do it. Let's just talk about it. So anxiety is your favorite topic, which is funny because we fall into these favorite topics, and I wouldn't say it's my favorite topic, but it's the one that I know most about because it was kind of the story of my life. So how did it end up being your favorite topic?
Oh, same way, right?
Oh, yeah.
Lived experience for sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely. I experienced anxiety as a young child, and I just found my favorite clients where I enjoyed the work the most. They were usually presenting with anxiety and relationship issues, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then when I started doing the narrative-focused trauma care, I had so many more ahas. It made so much more sense why I would be showing up in the world so anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it gives me the tools that I need to help clients make those same connections.
Yeah. Tell me more what narrative-focused trauma care is.
So it's a group of people who will come together and they'll read a story of harm with the facilitator there, that a story of harm that took place between the ages of 4 and 18. So sometime between your formative years.
Mm-hmm.
And the group will speak into the story and offer care to the person in a way they didn't receive care the first time. And it's done with a facilitator. And so there's a lot of teaching and coaching involved. But what happens is within the group, not only are you receiving care, but your style of relating will show up and how you have learned to cope with whatever harm that happened. It's playing out in the group, which is fascinating. So let's say the harm happens, you're a child, and maybe you recall an interaction where your father was yelling at you. In those moments, your brain is making all of these rapid changes, and it's trying to figure out, how can I not experience harm like this again? And so it learns how to be in their family of origin in a way that's going to cause less harm. So if they don't like the yelling, maybe they'll learn to go quiet, or maybe they'll learn to attack back, right? And so whatever that style was that they learned in that story of harm shows up in the group, and it's also telling us the pain points that's happening in a person's life. And that's usually why people want to go to therapy or to go to coaching, is because of those pain points.
Yeah. So let me be clear. It's a story prompt that you have, you start a story. I'm imagining this as kind of like an elementary school thing where you would sit down and say, let's write a story together. And you start with a prompt, and then everybody comes in, and as they talk about or share what their experience was or add to the story, you can pull from that maybe their experiences or how they would react. Am I getting that right?
Right. Yeah.
It's a prompt.
So much happens in the group dynamic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is really cool. And I'm wondering, my first question is, when they come in and they are in this setting where they're creating this story, do you notice them in the beginning? My first thought is, so if that were me, I would have this, I know what I'm supposed to do or supposed to say thought. Okay, I think the correct reaction would be this. How do you get them to a place where they're being really authentic with you during the story writing or the storytelling?
Okay, so you're saying I'm going to try to nail the story group, right? Like I'm going to try to do this just right.
Well, I'm picturing it as if you're coming and you're telling a story and it gets to a place, maybe I don't understand the narrative portion, but I'm really intrigued with this. So we have a storytelling going on, and it's how I'm seeing how you react in the story, like what your response is. Sometimes I think people, maybe this is me from coaching or from teaching, where we know what we're supposed to say. Like, I'm supposed to say this, but inside, like, can you read that in the way the story is? How does it all play out?
Yeah, such a great question. So when let's say a person wants to say the right answer, we're also paying attention to their bodies, which is where my
Yeah,
somatic and embodiment type of thing comes in. And
right.
so you're going to notice the incongruence. And so we would just draw attention to it. Like, tell me what's happening. Like, I see that maybe your face is really tight, or, maybe your words are very stilted. Can you tell me more about what's happening inside of you? But I would say if somebody is wanting to show up and give the right answers, well, we found your style of relating. We have found the way that you've tried to reduce the harm in the
Yeah.
world. And so that's where we can go with it.
Yeah. Like, that's really fun because I can see, like, I can picture a few people, when you're talking with people and you're asking them questions, and you can tell that they're overthinking it. Right?
Yes,
They're
yes,
just overthinking it, like, what does she want me to say? And my answer would always be like, whoa, 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 there's no right answer. I just want to know what you're thinking. Like, you don't have to tell me the right answer. Just what's the first thing that comes to your head? And so I love that there's that pull into like, it seems like you might be overthinking this, or I can tell that all of a sudden you're very tense, or you look like you're ready to bolt, or whatever's going on. Okay. That
exactly.
is really fun.
And then we
Yeah.
want to know, like, where did you learn to do that? How did that help you as a child to
Mm.
learn to overthink?
Yeah. So the story goes on and they finish the story. And then after, is it a continual process where the narrative is like the next week we have a different story, or is it you do the story once and then you build from that? How does it all play out?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to do it. You can
Mhm.
do it like intensively, where everybody will read the same story twice. Everybody will cycle through. Like if there's 6 people, we each take time to read each 6 stories and then we start over. And you can do it week to week, or you can do it in a whole weekend where we just spend a whole lot of time together all at once.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. So it definitely in a group setting then, where it's not in individual, like you, or do you do it individually with
I
people?
can do it individually, but I really
Yeah.
feel like the group is going to give you the most powerful experience and bring about the
Yeah.
most change. I really feel the one-to-one can be very limiting. It's incredible what can happen in a group, especially in our society
Mm.
now. We're so disconnected.
Right. Yeah. And that disconnection, I think it is funny. The idea of, I think sometimes people get tripped up about, I don't know if I want to share my story with people. And then for me personally, I remember when I started telling my story, when I started saying, hey, when I was really little, I had terrible health anxiety all the time. It started with my dad going on a business trip and all of these things. And I remember telling them gradually, like how it had progressed and all of these things I was afraid of. And I seriously thought I was the only person in the world that had ever had these ridiculous fears. And suddenly people are like, no way. You thought that too? And I was like, no, there's no way you could have thought that exact same crazy thought that I thought. But there really is so much power in bringing people together. So I love that that connection is there. What age group do you normally work with? Or like, is it men, women, adults, children, everyone?
Well, I want them 18 plus
Okay.
because we do so much story, child of origin work. There's not
Mhm.
enough space in there if you're under 18. But yeah, we
Okay.
can go all the way up to as old as you want to go. I haven't found a lot of people over 65 to be super
Mhm.
interested in therapeutic work yet.
Mm-mm. Nope.
But those are my favorite ages is probably 30 to 50.
Yeah.
A lot of 50-year-old women are really at that place in their life where they're ready to make some changes. They've
Mhm.
lived part of their life and they're like, this isn't working for me anymore.
Mhm.
But I love 20s, 30s, whatever. People, anybody open. If you want to do this work,
Yeah.
they're my people. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a fantastic opening. I think that that has been, as much as social media has given us this disconnect and it's given us this, like all of these different ways that anxiety is showing up for us and making us feel horrible. I think really the openness of people sharing, I'm going to therapy, has been so amazing. Just people saying, no, really, you should go. It's okay.
Right. It's the new thing to do is to do your own work.
It really is. It's like the little black dress of self-care now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you don't go to therapy? Why? People kind of give you the like, oh, maybe you should.
You're not a very involved person. Right.
Yeah, it is. It is really, really good. And I have to say that I was one that I went to therapy one time when I was in college. It was like the worst segment of my life. And my mom's like, you need to go talk with somebody. And it was the 90s. And so I went to the school psychology department or the psychiatry department, and they had some sweet college student doing probably an internship. And I went for, I don't know, a little bit of time. And I was like, this is making me so much worse. I had no idea. And nobody went to college. I mean, nobody went to therapy when I was in college. I mean, it was 1992 or 3 or 4 or whatever. No, what was it? 97, I guess. And yeah, I was like, I'm not doing that. That was awful. And so I never went again. I was like, no, that's not for me. And then recently I went to therapy and I was like, oh my gosh, like, can I just come have coffee with you once a week and hang out?
Yeah, I think there was so much. The past view was like if there's some kind of pathology to it, or there's something wrong with you if you need therapy.
Mhm.
And I think now we're understanding, no, this is the human experience. And
Mhm.
therapy is a place where we're just learning how to be in our bodies and to show up in the world the way we want to show up in the world. And therapy is a one way to do that
Mhm.
rather
And
than something's so wrong with you. Right.
right. It's kind of that old thing back when medication first came out and people would say like, oh, are you on Prozac? And now everybody's like, yeah, I take Prozac. And then this other person takes this. So yeah. But so back to this idea of being in their bodies. This is something that when I'm coaching someone, I guess, like, just to share my process with you, because I know I asked you how you would feel about like saying, this is what therapists do, this is what coaches do. My process is always like, okay, let's talk about how your body feels and how we can calm this down. Let's talk about exhaling. Let's talk about noticing that when you feel that way, we really need to not believe anything that we're thinking. Like, let's just practice feeling anxious and letting it be okay to feel anxious. What can we do? Just say, oh, this is how it feels. So one of the things I like to do is have them close their eyes and say, tell me what it looks like. Tell me what it sounds like. Tell me what it tastes like. I mean, even with adults, I want you to get out some crayons or colored pencils, steal your kids' art supplies. I want you to draw it. And I just want you to like look at it so that we can make this something tangible instead of it's just some big scary monster floating out in the sky. And let's just feel it. And then we'll talk about like, oh, well, okay, what do you think? Like when you're feeling that, what's going on in your head? What if that's not true? Let's talk about, what do we have to do to calm down your body so you can think clearly? And one of the questions I always get is, well, what did somebody ask me last week? They said, so I want to work with you. Are you a psychiatrist? I'm like, not at all. No, not even close. So my explanation has always been, I feel like coaches are more action oriented, goal oriented, where therapists are really about helping you heal. And I'm like, if you are coming to me because you've had an intense trauma, I am not your girl. Not because I don't sympathize with you, not because I couldn't make you feel maybe better, but I am not that person. So I'm like, do you need to talk to a therapist about that? But I'm interested to see, like, from your perspective, where's the intersection and where's the difference?
Yeah, what a good question. I love what you're doing with those interventions because I feel like anxiety starts because they didn't learn to tolerate emotion growing up. Their parents weren't able to embrace whatever emotion it is, they learned to
Mhm.
suppress it. And so you're kind of bringing that back to the surface and showing them, no, I can tolerate this and I'm going to be okay.
Mhm.
And I think you said it right. Like it's very goal oriented in
Mhm.
mind. So somebody's coming to you, I want to be able to move past my anxiety so I can go do this particular thing. My
Yeah.
body just won't let me go and apply for that job or have another baby or whatever it is.
Mhm.
But with therapy, yeah, like if it's deeply embedded and it's not just anxiety is tripping me up in this one area, it's kind of global. And it's kind of been ongoing to the point where their lives are not no longer functional.
Mhm.
That's when you kind of want a therapist to kind of do some deep diving into past trauma. But what you're doing is
Mhm.
you're giving them the tools so that therapy can be more useful,
Yeah.
right? Like learning able to tolerate those feelings that are going to come up in therapy is critically important to how quickly they'll get better.
Mhm. And it has been a really fun thing to be able to piggyback with different therapists to different things. I worked with a girl. She was younger. She was 12ish, and she was going to a therapist who did horse therapy. And I'm like, tell me all the things that you did. Tell me how this works. Tell me what, I mean, so it was so intriguing. And so I would love to know, I want to hear, can you like tell a story without breaking any client confidentiality, like where you saw this progress with the narrative storytelling? Because I think there's something really fun. It almost disconnects it from, I mean, even though you're working with someone's past and someone's like self and who they are, it I like the idea of it being almost a story, like you could make it about someone else, but you are definitely having the reactions and healing from it. So, can you tell a story of something like tell me something amazing?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So
Sorry, I
imagine,
kind of put you on the spot with that.
yeah, I would say imagine someone's showing up in their group. Maybe they're really quiet and reserved. Their answers are very short, very concise. It seems like they may be carrying a lot of shame. They don't want to contribute to the conversation. They're afraid whatever I have to contribute might not matter or it's the wrong thing to say. But then when it's their turn to tell the story, it's making total sense why they would show up that way. And people can start to speak into that and show them, okay, when you were a little child and you were experiencing maybe an adult that was telling you to be quiet all the time, you learned, I don't have anything good to offer. It's starting to correct a past experience. And the narrative changes to there was something wrong with me that I was always quiet or shy to, oh, I had to be shy. I had to be quiet. And it's actually okay if I can show up and take up a little space. And so you see the progress of maybe very contained person to maybe somebody who starts to open up, their shoulders loosen because they were receiving the love and care that they needed. And they're seen as a child that was good, that had to learn to be this way that they're ashamed of.
Yeah.
And so instead of seeing themselves as there's something wrong with me, it's no, I'm really good. I'm great as I am. Like the shame is removed.
So good. I love that. And the story, I don't know, the story thing is just fascinating. I was a teacher for a long time. So I'm probably like, oh, stories, this is a great thing because you do see things come out even when kids write, right? Like I'm thinking, I guess, past life for me is definitely seeing the things that I could see when kids would write stories. So that's huge. So do you notice it being like, I know generally when I'm talking with somebody and I'll say, okay, you feel this feeling in your chest. Let's talk about like, if you close your eyes and you put your hands on it, how does it feel? And then I always get bad. And I'm like, yeah, I feel, but that's not a thing. Let's talk about what bad is. And so we break it down. Sometimes I'm like whipping out the emotion wheel. I'm like, point or like, tell me what this is. And one of the things that I've noticed so often is that bad means well, first of all, I've never really paid attention to it because I hate the way it feels. So I try not to think about it at all. Or it ends up being like a giant knot of a ton of different emotions. I feel scared. I feel frustrated. I feel overwhelmed. I feel anxious. And one of the things I've tried to do is say, what if I know technically anxiety is an emotion, but I'm like, can we make it a feeling and not as an emotion? Because if I, what seems to work for me is saying anxiety is a feeling and we have all these other emotions here. Is this something that I am making up? Have you noticed
Absolutely
that
not.
like bad is
No, yeah, you were summing it up so articulately and perfectly. Yes. So as children, right, they're having all of these feelings, they're learning to suppress them. And the more they suppress them, it's like this reservoir is now developed. And so it's now showing up in their body, and they can only put the word bad to it. But
Mhm.
all emotions start in the body. It's really just like different sensations all coming together. And so to start with the body is to really start where they are, with where the feeling originated. And it's like you're kind of parsing through and getting down to, well, what's really wrong? What's going on?
Yeah, it is. That is one thing where I'm like, I think when you really sit with that feeling and know where it is and know how it is, and when you actually get to the point where you can say, name that emotion, like, what is that? Like, how does that feel? And it is funny, like, how many words will come out of that one spot.
Yeah. And if you can develop that body awareness, they can understand sooner, oh, this means I'm feeling angry. This means I'm feeling scared. They can decide what they want to do with that. They have so
Mhm.
much more choice.
Anger is an interesting one.
Yeah. Super fun.
Yeah. And that snap anger or that constant feeling of anger
Yeah.
and
And
where
so
that
many
comes.
people feel overwhelmed by it or ashamed of it, or they don't know what should I even do with that. Like they're not supposed to have it when it's
Hmm.
such an important emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And trying to figure out how to be like, no, what if it's okay that you're angry? What if it's good that you're angry?
Right. Thank goodness that you're angry. We need people to be angry over children being sexually trafficked, right? We need
Right.
that angry energy to bring justice to the world or to
Right.
protest something that feels like somebody's crossing a boundary or
Yeah.
you're keeping me from something that's important to me. It's a flag going off to say, pay attention, this matters.
Yeah. And that shame, I think that shame is such another one that you've mentioned that like I had so much shame inside, but then like when I'm angry and now all of a sudden I'm ashamed that I'm angry and then I'm angry that I'm ashamed that I'm angry. It just layers and layers and layers and then like peeling the stickers off. So with the narratives that you do and finding these different emotions, is it like how's the process of recovery for people like with that?
Yeah. Well, I love that you're bringing up shame. Shame is like the thing that like locks the trauma into place.
Mm,
Whatever story of harm that they're bringing, it's usually layered and cloaked with a lot of shame. And so bringing it to a group, it's super vulnerable and exposing. It's also an opportunity to have that shame be met with kindness and tenderness. And then the shame can recede. They can see, okay, I can bring this thing, this hard feeling, and people can be with me in it, and they're not going to go away. I can still be met with tenderness and care. And so the shame recedes, and then they're able to work with the emotions and what happened.
yeah. And that thought of people will still be there. They're not going to go away. Yeah.
So much trauma gets locked in with shame and isolation. They felt that feeling, and they were alone as
Hmm.
children. And
Hmm.
so if they can get back to there as an adult with people, that's where the healing happens. They're not alone anymore, which is why I'm a big group person.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really fresh perspective on group too, because it is. I mean, even that idea of like coming to a group with shame, like you said, that's a big thing to share with people because there's vulnerability there. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to like tell all these people all these things about myself and to be just brave enough to be able to go in there and say, no, I'm going to tell you this. Like, this is how bad I want this. And this is how much I'm willing to go, like, how far I'm willing to go for it. It's empowering.
Yes. And anxiety, right? It's coming up as you kind of think about, oh no, I have to bring the story. What are people going to think of me? And so if they can work with a coach like you, they can learn to like expand their tolerance to that feeling to get themselves to a place where they can experience that healing, which is
Yeah.
why we need coaches.
Yeah. And this is why we need therapists. We don't have to argue on social media anymore. We've solved every problem in the world. Look at that.
Let's work
Um,
together. Yes.
but there was someone, speaking of social media, though, I always seem to go back to this topic, and I don't mean to pick on social media because I do love it. But I did see, and I cannot remember specifically who it was. It was someone who their theory was that all anxiety is technically a form of separation anxiety, like separation from yourself, separation from your parents, separation. I've spent far too much time thinking about this. First of all, I'm like, is that really true? I don't know that I think that's really true. But it was a very interesting thought process that they had about, well, you're either separated from your own inner child or you're separated from your parents or separated from who you want to be. And all of those things are causing anxiety in a different way. And I'm like, maybe.
Well, there's an idea.
I know. I was like, well, that
Hillary
seems...
Jacobs Handel said it. It's basically a suppression of emotions over time. So you can stay in connection with your caregiver. That makes sense to me. Hillary
Mhm.
Jacobs, that's not Elle.
That actually makes a lot more sense to me too. It was just funny. I like to pick people's brains who have different perspectives than me because I'm like, I'm not sure if I like the theory of making it that simple, but it does not feel accurate to
Right.
me. But I
So
think the
like,
suppressed emotions does because it is such a knot of 10 different things at once for people.
right, like if you're a child and you're afraid of something, but you can see that that irritates your mom, or she wants you to stop because she's busy, she doesn't really have like the bandwidth for that. Like
Mhm.
you need to stay in connection with mom so you don't act afraid. You stop voicing that. That keeps you
Mhm.
in connection. I wouldn't call that separation anxiety.
No, no, it's connection. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where I'm sure he has his own way of thinking about it. But I was like, man, I would love to talk to that guy and see where he is, like where he's separated. But I think that, who was it? I don't know. I can't remember. But yeah, it was an interesting concept that he brought too. So do you work with people like specifically are you in person? Are you online? Like, how do you work with people?
Yeah, I do both. So I
Mhm.
can, because I'm finished the certification for narrative focused trauma care, I can technically see people as a coach nationwide, but I also
Mhm.
do in person. I do a lot of online work because I'm a mom and I find that convenient, but I do in persons on the weekend intensively with people.
Yeah.
And I also have a podcast if people are interested
Heck
in
yeah.
hearing narrative therapy in action, right? They can hear us do story work on a podcast if they were interested in hearing how it works.
I am for sure interested in hearing how this works. So yeah, and I am going to check out your podcast. I think you said it's Phoenix Rising. Is that correct?
The Phoenix Effect
The
podcast.
Phoenix Effect. That's right. I'm sorry. I'm going to put that in the show notes. So the Phoenix Effect podcast, and that will be in the show notes. And then what is your website? How do people find you if they want to connect?
I can be found at courageousstepscounseling.com and people can reach out to me there. I'm on Instagram and TikTok as Therapy with Elle.
Okay.
Yeah, people can reach out anytime.
Great. I love the way that you're doing this. I love it. It to me, this is like the first time I've heard about this kind of therapy with like the narrative. And I think that's such a fun way and it feels safe and it feels different. Yeah.
That's why I wanted to do it. It had like
Yeah.
such a different way to bring healing than so many other different modalities. Yeah, I'm glad that you are interested. We
I
love
am very
to talk to
interested.
you.
I'm going to check it out and I can't wait to hear more about it. So, what else do people need to know about you before we go? What else would you like for them to know?
Well, I am opening story groups. If anyone thinks that this kind of healing is something that they would like to check out, I will be offering them in person and online if they want to do it.
Thank you for doing such fun and incredible and really important work.
Thanks for having me on. You
Yeah,
too.
especially in this crazy world with all of the anxiety right now. It's so high. And I feel like everybody's partnering up. And I say this every week, but we are going to knock this out. I mean, the more people who know how to do it, the more people who can help other people do it. And that's how it's done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the More Than Anxiety podcast. Before you go, be sure to subscribe and leave a review so others can easily find this resource as well. And of course, if you're ready to feel calm, to stop overthinking, and have a lot more fun, you can go to the show notes, click the link, and talk to me about coaching. I'll talk to you soon.